Animals Protection Amendment, Prohibitions on Exhibition Bill. Mr Pearson.
Thank you, Mr Acting President. I move that leave be given to bring in a bill for an act to amend the Exhibited Animals Protection Act 1986 to prohibit the exhibition of certain animals in connection with a circus, amusement park, fair or similar place of public entertainment. The Exhibited Animals Protection Amendment Prohibition on Exhibition Bill.
The question is the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. All those against say no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Mr Acting President, I present the bill and move that the bill be read for a first time and printed. Thank you.
The question is the motion of the member. All those in favour say aye.
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 All those against say no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Exhibited Animals Protection Amendment, Prohibitions on Exhibition Bill, first reading.
I move that this bill be now read a second time. The Exhibited Animals Protection Amendment Prohibitions on Exhibition Bill 2016 prohibits circuses from exhibiting exotic animals. Exotic animals are defined as, quote, any animal other than a stock animal within the meaning of the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act 1979, or a companion animal within the meaning of the Companion Animals Act, unquote. The bill makes it an offence for a person to exhibit an exotic animal at a circus and to breed, keep, train or transport an exotic animal for the purpose of exhibiting the animal in a circus, whether or not the circus is located in New South Wales. Exotic animals currently exhibited at circuses must be rehomed in an animal display establishment or wildlife sanctuary approved by the Secretary within 12 months. If such a placement is not reasonably practicable, the owner must keep the exotic animal in accordance with the standards currently prescribed under the Principal Act. Established science tells us that the welfare and well-being of exotic animals is severely compromised by being held captive in a travelling circus. The circus business model is predicated on forcing animals to live in barren, cramped conditions, including stressful travel in trucks known as beast wagons for thousands of kilometres each year. The animals have little in the way of enrichment or stimulation while confined, nor can they engage in many of their natural behaviours. Animal circuses have their origins in the Roman Empire. Their purpose was not just to entertain the masses, but also to reinforce the myth of human superiority over mere beasts, quote unquote. Many thousands of exotic animals were tortured, butchered and killed during performances at the Colosseum in Rome. Australia's first travelling animal circuses were established in the 1850s, but there is no fine tradition to celebrate. Caged lions and tigers, brutalised for their public's amusement, were exhibited alongside freak shows, which exhibit such exhibits as bearded ladies, conjoined twins, or the world's smallest woman. Horrifyingly, a group of Aboriginal people from the Woolgooroo clan in Palm Island were taken abroad by Barnum and Bailey's circus to be displayed alongside other Indigenous people from around the globe. The Woolgooroo people were promoted as Australian cannibals, quote unquote, and forced to dance, sing and throw boomerangs to the audience while performing alongside of an elephant. Within a year, many in the group had succumbed to illness and some died, with the body of an Aboriginal man called Tambo being embalmed and put on permanent display. His remains were finally returned to this country after many approaches by his people. There is not a shred of credibility to the oft-stated argument that circuses stimulate people's interest in conserving exotic animals or respect for animals' capabilities and skill. How can watching a lion balance on a small table possibly have any relevance to understanding the place of the lion in the African savannah? In 2018, there are so many more authoritative ways that people can learn about animals. Animal circuses have never been about education as they now proclaim, but rather about rather about what is human voyeurism, watching animals humiliated and degraded by the manner in which they are forced to perform and be displayed. They become parodies of themselves. No one with a modicum of empathy could possibly enjoy watching a subjugated animal being forced to perform tricks against their own natural instincts. Circuses may have moved on from forcing lions and tigers to jump through burning hoops, or the ultimate in voyeurism, the staged electrocution death of Topsy the elephant at Coney Island Amusement Park in 1903, but the reality is still animal suffering and misery. As a society, we have become more concerned about animal welfare. In recognition of this change, Australian circus culture underwent a revolution in the late 70s with the emergence of the animal-free alternatives such as Circus Oz and the Flying Fruit Circus and the internationally acclaimed Cirque du Soleil. Fast forward to the 21st century, and in New South Wales, only Lennon Brothers, Stardust and Circus Royale continue to use exotic animals such as lions, monkeys and camels. They are left to tour on the fringes of the entertainment circuit and on the outskirts of country towns. Often they are met with animal rights protesters objecting to the circus's presence in their town. Acknowledging the growing public disquiet, over 40 councils in Australia have now banned exotic animal circuses from performing on council-owned and controlled land. In New South Wales, they include Parramatta, Lismore, Wingacarribee, Newcastle, Blue Mountains, Warringah, Woollahra, Hornsby, Pittwater, Manly, Randwick, Ku-ring-gai, Lake Macquarie, Liverpool and Camden. A number of other New South Wales councils are currently being petitioned to ban animal circuses on council land. The ACT government passed legislation in 1992 prohibiting bears, elephants, giraffes, primates or felines other than domestic cats to be exhibited in circuses. Animals have not been the only victims of circuses. Between 1863 and 2001, there were 130 incidents in Australia where either members of the public or circus workers were harmed. In terms of greatest risk, animal handlers during performances and training, as well as circus hand feeding animals or cleaning cages, are individuals most likely to suffer from injuries or death. Many of the accidents that happened to patrons were because people stood too close to the cages where animals were housed. Members of the public were mauled by lions, trampled by elephants and lacerated by monkeys. The animals most prone to instigating attacks were lions, followed by tigers and elephants. Elephants killed more often than any other circus animal. Some circuses were so notorious for the injuries they caused that it became a matter of some concern to public safety. But it wasn't until 1943 that the New South Wales government finally intervened by cancelling the licence of a particularly negligent circus. Injuries to the public and circus workers continued right up until circuses began closing down due to lack of financial viability. By the early 2000s, only Stardust, Ashton's and Lennon Brothers Circus exhibited dangerous exotic animals such as lions, tigers and elephants. In 2001, a lion tamer was attacked by 3 lions at a Lennon Brothers performance in Penrith. In 2004, a toddler at Ashton's Circus tragically lost his arms when he was struck through the bars of a cage containing two tigons. The most recent case stems from a time when I was with Animal Liberation New South Wales. Until 1996, Stardust Circus had 2 performing elephants called Anna and Bambi. They had spent their entire lives in captivity, much of it together, and Anna witnessed Bambi's death from anaesthesia complications after treatment for an injured foot. Bambi fell and suffocated to death as a consequence of the treating veterinarian and staff failing to provide her with a supportive sling for the surgery. Elephants are highly social animals, and in recognition of that, the Circus Animal Welfare Standard requirement is that elephants should not be solitary unless there are compelling reasons. In 2000, Animal Liberation New South Wales campaigned to have Anna, a solitary elephant, transferred to Western Plains Zoo, given that she had been solitary for 6 years and that this was causing her significant distress. Imagine a life alone and bound by foot shackles, except when performing. Animal Liberation wrote to the then Director General of the Department of Agriculture, stating that if the annual permit was to be issued for Stardust to keep Anna, and therefore meaning that she would be kept as a solitary elephant, then we would challenge that decision in the Supreme Court. This was confirmed, and Animal Liberation took Stardust to the New South Wales Supreme Court, arguing that Anna suffered psychologically as a consequence of her imposed solitude. I sought to have Anna, in her mid-40s, paired with Gigi, a retired elephant from Ashton Circus. We lost the case, but in 2001, Stardust arranged for Gigi to join Stardust, but the psychological damage had been done. In 2008, for reasons apparently unknown, Anna struck out against her handler, and his injuries included a broken back and a ruptured aorta, and were found to be the result of a severe blunt trauma, quote unquote, with the cause of death being a direct result of Anna crushing the upper back and with her foot, and he lay on the ground. I was informed, however, by a trapeze artist at the circus that Anna and Gigi's handler had beaten Gigi with a piece of 4x2 timber and then approached Anna. As I stated at the time, it had been proven before that elephants that killed once frequently kill again. Ashton Circus elephant Abu killed 3 workers in 1974, 1983, and again in 1987. His partner at the time had been Gigi, who was later bought by Stardust Circus as the new companion for Anna. In response to public concern and a directive from the Department of Primary Industries, Stardust retired the 53-year-old Anna and her companion elephant Gigi, 50, to the Western Plains Zoo, where they lived out their lives free of shackles, long hours in the back of beast wagons, and the glare and the noise of the circus ring. This tragic episode ended the sorry story of performing elephants in circuses. And this brings us to the ongoing suffering of the remaining exotic animals in travelling circuses in New South Wales. Lions, camels, and rhesus macaque monkeys are still being exhibited and forced to perform for human entertainment. Animal circus owners tell us that because their lions have been bred for multiple generations in captivity, and that the macaques are bred or sourced from zoos, they are shown affection, and if they have companion animals and are extensively trained, they do not suffer from stress or boredom. A University of Bristol study in 2009 found that circus animals spend most of their days confined, and between 1% and 9% of the day taken up with performing or training, and the remaining time is spent in so-called exercise pens. In other words, for at least 90% of the day, they are in small, barren, temporary pens that are set up on the featureless, dusty, muddy back paddocks of New South Wales. Monkeys fare even worse, stuck in sterile cages that would be an animal welfare scandal if used in zoos. Exercise pens are significantly smaller than minimum zoo requirements for outdoor enclosures. Given that there is no difference between the needs of a lion in a zoo or a circus, what is the explanation or the justification for this? The reality is that you couldn't actually have a profitable travelling circus with pens the size of zoo enclosures. The circus animal standards therefore allow for the anomaly based on the fact that this is a commercial imperative. The science is, however, very clear that wild animals such as lions cannot flourish in domesticated settings regardless of how long they have been bred in captivity. The conditions of captivity, quote, constrain an animal's behaviours, and restrict appropriate or allows inappropriate social interactions, both intra and specifically, unquote, is what is stated by the scientist Price in 1999. Quote, wild animals that have been bred for tens of generations in captivity still show extremely high motivation to perform certain activities seen in their wild counterparts. Mason et al. 2001. Be under no illusions that exotic circus animals are anything other than wild animals forced to adapt to and submit themselves to humans. They have been hand-reared, which makes them less fearful towards humans, and they may be described by their handlers as tamed, but they can never be considered domesticated. Indeed, in order to tame them, infant animals in circuses are regularly separated from their mother and hand-reared. Studies have shown that this increases stress-related behaviour and can cause an elevation in the prolonged stress response. Detling 2002, McEwen 2007, Reimers et al. 2007. These effects can last into adulthood in terms of increased stress sensitivity. Circus owners may speak of generational breeding lines, circus owners may speak of generational breeding lines into docility, but there have been no studies undertaken to establish that selective reproduction has taken place. Genetically speaking, exotic animals in circuses are identical to their wild counterparts. They express similarly high motivation to perform their species-specific behaviours, and their instincts are unaffected. As a result, allegedly tamed exotic animals in captivity are often unpredictable and, under stressful circumstances, very likely to become aggressive. The University of Bristol study that I referenced earlier examined behaviour, health, living and travelling conditions, and compared the conditions of non-domesticated animals in circuses with their counterparts kept in zoos. The study found that, quote, circus animals spent a great amount of the time performing stereotypies, such as head weaving, pacing, and repetitive abnormal behaviours, especially when shackled or confined in beast wagons, unquote. Stereotypies are caused by a captive animal's repeated attempts to adapt to its environment or by a dysfunction of the central nervous system. Locomotory stereotypies include pacing, and similar behaviours are oral stereotypies, including repetitive movements with the tongue or repeatedly biting an object. Repetitive movements of the whole body without the animal moving from one place to another, such as swaying. This category could include, for example, a stereotypy sometimes shown by primates that consists of the animal moving its body backwards and forwards while seated. Other stereotypies include excessive grooming, leading sometimes to hair loss and dermatitis. The motivation of locomotory stereotypies of carnivores is not known with certainty, and it is certainly the result of the combination of several factors. Some studies suggest that lack of space is important, while others point to the inability to perform the normal behaviour of the species as the main cause. In carnivores, pacing is more common in those species that usually travel long distances in the wild. Regardless of how many generations have been born into captivity, all confined exotic animals are at the risk of developing stereotypies due to this confinement, boredom, and the stress caused by the inability to perform normal behaviours. Stereotypic behaviour is particularly associated with performances in circus elephants, and in short, they are driven mad. The presence of stereotypies is indicative of poor welfare in circus animals. Inadequate diet and housing conditions and the effects of repeated performances can also lead to significant health problems. Circus animals travel frequently, and the associated forced movement, human handling, noise, wagon movement and confinement are important stressors. Available evidence suggests that performing that performing near spectators may cause severe stress to wild animals in itself. This can be exacerbated by restricted movement options, harsh lighting, exposure to loud or aversive sounds, strange odours and extreme temperatures. For example, stereotypies increase when the music starts just before a performance. I have witnessed this myself. The type of training that is used affects the welfare of the animals. While we cannot be sure about the exact nature of the training methods, any training procedures that include physical punishment will be stressful for and impose fear in the animals undergoing them. In the United States, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals has previously exposed the use of bull hooks on elephants in order to obtain their compliance. Although there is no conclusive evidence as to whether animals habituate to travel, confinement in beast wagons for long periods of time is a definite welfare concern. Circuses have a limited ability to make improvements such as increased space, environmental enrichment and appropriate social housing, which may be provided in zoos. Given the circus's financial and physical limitations, social animals are often housed singly or in groups smaller than the average in the wild or in unnatural groupings. This prevents establishment of normal social dynamics and has significant consequences for behaviour and welfare. Consequently, the Bristol University study found that only non-domesticated animals suitable for circus life would have low space requirements, simple social structures, low cognitive function, non-specialist ecological requirements, and an ability to be transported without adverse welfare impacts. None of the commonest species exhibited by animals, such as the elephants and large felids, meet these criteria. They concluded that the species of non-domesticated animals commonly kept in circuses appear the least suited to circus life. Animal circuses are closing all around the world. The most famous in the United States, after almost 150 years in the business, Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey made the decision to close earlier this year. They attributed the closure to changing community tastes in entertainment and the community's growing concern regarding animal welfare. 45 countries have already banned or are transitioning to ban animal circuses, citing animal welfare concerns as the main reason. May New South Wales join Sweden, Costa Rica, India, Finland, Singapore, Switzerland, Norway, Austria, Belgium, and so on. The time is up for exotic animals in this state. The circus families themselves know that they are the last generation to crack the whip against the majestic lion and the magnificent tiger. The shackles of countless generations of tortured elephants will never again be used to subjugate these gentle and intelligent, magnificent giants. I respectfully ask my fellow members to support this bill and to give these animals the compassionate response they deserve. May their final years be spent in a sanctuary rather than in the confines of the beast wagon. I commend this bill to the House.
Government Whip.